stayed wrestling in sophomore in my weight class, so I either had to go up
Mhm.
and get killed or go down. And, 8, 10 pounds, and just be fatigued.
Yeah, it's rough, isn't it?
And when I was in high school, they had twins that were on our wrestling team, and they both became state champions, but they were constantly, depending on what the need was, either going up in weight or going down in weight,
Yeah.
just sweating, trying to make the weight class,
Mhm.
constant effort. So it's quite a sport. I never.
Yeah,
played it,
it's a
but
crazy sport.
It's funny, I hadn't wrestled, especially if I ever was gonna wrestle. I hadn't been to a wrestling match since high school. Nephew of mine, so the Seattle County Science School, SAS, it's a very small 1A. It's downtown Seattle. Private school, they are in the same league, it's like mixed that valley. So when they have the district championships, they would appear.
Mm.
And so we went. I hadn't been to a wrestling match in 45 plus years, so you like. It all came back,
Yeah. Well, I don't know where a tool is.
Well, he's here. He was biking in. I think he's got soaked, so he might need a minute to recover from the.
Okay. Should we wait or start the meeting?
I'm okay waiting for a minute, yeah.
Did you watch some of the Blaine wrestlers then?
Yes.
We had a couple of state champions this
Yeah,
year.
this was 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
My sister-in-law's this diminutive Japanese woman. Born here, parents are both Japanese, but she's always very dressed to the nines, and so here she comes to life in her heels.
Yeah.
You've got everybody from Mixac and you'll get
You bet.
hard.
Yeah, I love it.
You're not blending in, just let me tell you.
I love it. They bring the Japanese team here every year. Have you seen that? The Japanese Olympic team, I guess. And they do matches at the Blaine High School as
Oh.
part of the Battle of the Mats or whatever they call it. But they're always, I mean, extremely good. Yes. Terrifyingly good.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, that's what I think he knows it's fine. Hey, Tool, it's 8:18. I swear to God, it is. Thank you.
Balance on this.
Okay, 8:19, and I'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Any changes, anyone?
No, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 27th, 2024, and approval of claims for March 12th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're at public comment. There's nobody in the room. Do any attendees on Zoom have a comment? I don't see any hands.
Doesn't look like.
Okay, so we'll move along to the general manager's report.
Good morning, commissioners. John.
Good morning.
I'll apologize in advance. I'm fighting it's allergies from all this wind and pollen that's running around, so I don't have contagious disease or anything. I've got a few items I'll move through fairly quickly. First of one is I characterize as business development. We've got a number of project developers talking to us for facilities they were planning for the Cherry Point area. And Chris has mentioned some of them before, but let's give you an update. The AltaGas electrolyzer is moving along. We're at the stage now. In fact, I have a meeting with Bonneville tomorrow to talk about interconnection. So we'll be submitting what's called a lines and loads interconnection request probably within the next week to get that project in the queue. Queued up, ready to go, but it's moving. They are planning to build on the Intelco site. Commissioner?
Yeah, so I had a question about that. That's there in the public power news. There's a couple of articles about the hydrogen hub community and Department of Energy having some conversations about rules around the hydrogen hub solicitation, and specifically relating to the hydrogen being produced from new sources within the last 3 years. Is that having an impact on our project?
It may.
It might be worthwhile for you to find out, because if it is, I mean, if there's things we can do if we support, a change in the DOE's rules. But right now, the way the rules are stated is that they limit it to, as what I read in the article, is that it limits the source for the hydrogen to be from a new source within the last 3 years. So I don't know if that's a holdup, and if it is.
Well, it's an issue that's
we
being
should know
discussed,
if
and
it's-
AltaGas has discussed it with us, and there is some talk there may be a waiver of that requirement. Because it does impact a lot of facilities, and as you're aware, the AltaGas project, they did get an award under the hydrogen hub program, so.
Right, that's fine, but yeah, so if there's anything we can do, is something for us to discuss at the commission, so.
Appreciate that, Commissioner. The next one is here again, Chris is in conversation. It's moving not as far as AltaGas, but this greenhouse, large greenhouse complex that's being planned for Cherry Point in the vicinity of BP. And the interesting thing about it is that they're going to capture CO2 for plant growth. So they will have a generator on site that's going to produce heat. And that generator size big enough that they'll actually be able to sell electricity as well into the grid. But their intent is to capture a portion of the CO2 and pump it into the greenhouses. So I thought that was kind of a novel.
The diesel generator, what kind of generator?
It's a gas fired generator.
Propane, right?
Pardon?
Propane.
I'm not exactly sure what the fuel source is. I didn't get that information from Chris. But they're aware of the carbon issue and capture carbon as part of that project. But this one they don't even have the site pinned down yet. So it's just to raise it here as a possibility, but they've got a long ways to go.
It probably doesn't pertain to us, but PUDs are not authorized to market CO2.
Well, they wouldn't be marketing CO2. I mean, they're going to use CO2 on site in terms
What are they growing?
of tomatoes.
Got it.
They do CO2.
They're trying to capture some of the, South America provides, I don't know what percent of our tomatoes, but they want to cut.
We get a lot in greenhouses from BC. BC's got a huge greenhouse tomato business
Yeah.
industry.
Well, they want to move on this side of the border. They are Canadian to, avoid that cross-border fees, taxes, et cetera. So that one's going on. The other county jail is just kind of hold. We're waiting for, county, it's in their court, so to speak, to make the next steps in terms of design of that facility, so. We're still involved in discussions on that. And the other thing, in terms of business development, this kind of pertains to adjudication, and we're seeing, I think, in the years I've been here, a lot more early season requests for irrigation connections. Both in areas where we have existing piping, Douglas Road, up Alder Road, but also in areas that are just adjacent. For example, we've had 2 requests, whether or not we could serve areas just outside of Grandview. And I think people are starting to get aware of adjudication, and they're really thinking if we're going to expand our agricultural operations or want irrigation for a piece of property that we want, we better start now, try to get it done. And we've had, I want to say 5 requests already. And it's kind of unusual. Usually we have our typical irrigators like Bedlington, that, potato folks and others that, depending on the season, if it looks like it's going to be dry, they'll sign a contract. If not, they won't. But this is new.
These are small ag.
Yeah, the last one I talked to, and they're being represented by real estate agents, so you don't exactly know necessarily who it is, but they were looking at a 35 acre parcel out off of Enterprise and Grandview, but it was east of our Grandview service area, so we'd have to extend to get to them. That becomes a constraint. On the operations front, as you're aware, we've the new me is already on board. Kurt will be taking over my position at the end of the year. So we're working on getting him up to speed. And then, of course, Andrew is going to be taking over the power supply transmission portion of what I do now. So what we're in the process right now of doing is putting together basically a curriculum for each of them to supplement, the knowledge they already have. And, so we're looking at basically educational opportunities on the electric utility side, water utility side, and also looking at management and leadership training that they both can take. And there isn't any one place you can go for that information. So we're going to be putting together both online training and in-person seminars and workshops, basically give them that background they need. And I just made a list here, but there's a whole variety. We're going to use American Public Power Association. They've got a lot of online training. We've got the American Water Works Association that with the local Washington chapter provides water training. NWPPA, in fact, we've got Kurt going later this month to a NWPPA seminar workshop that's going to be in the Tri-Cities area, and it's on leadership skills. So we're going to get the road running and keep working at it. Green River Community College is another one that has some water subject matter and training. And then ultimately the Willamette University in Oregon actually has a utility management program, but we felt like that's a little high powered for right now. It's more if you're transitioning to become a general manager than it is for operating the utilities. So I just wanted to let you know that we're thinking about that.
That's
and
great.
pulling it together. There's, like I said, there's no one source. We can't send them to one school and they learn it all. So, but there is training out there.
It's really important, especially with what Kurt's leaving too. And in our last commission meeting, we talked a lot about how important it was to now start thinking a little bit more about bringing in people maybe earlier in their career and recognizing the difficulty of hiring without that kind of a thing. So
Yeah, it's an issue. There's a lot of good training out there for skilled positions. Like if we had a lineman, something. There's any number of schools we can send them to, or electricians, but for general and management, leadership, all of that.
I mean, as I now at present, one of the longest serving people here, and you brought a wealth of knowledge to the PUD, of course, appreciative of that. And so maybe as you're thinking about your transition out, just helping us to stay as smart as you were.
Well, appreciate the thing, Commissioner, but you know, the interesting thing to me is I've never been in this position before. I've never had to, you know, I do have a fair amount of knowledge, but disseminating that knowledge to somebody else is kind of.
Mhm. Your last challenge.
It was easy with Star Trek. You just plugged in and
Yeah.
it was a data transfer. Anyway, the other thing I mentioned that Chris has been keeping you updated and sending you articles, I know, but a lot of recent news articles on transmission constraints, and it appears that the press has finally caught up with, we have a big issue there. So I think he sent you the one Cascadia News. I thought that was actually an excellent article. There wasn't too much in there that I could disagree with or say, no, that isn't right. So, and then of course the Bonneville Clearing Up had that article on the Bonneville cluster study, transmission cluster study, and we pointed to, you know, the fact that we've got all these new generators and loads wanting to connect to the system, chasing limited transmission capacity. I think there was something close to 16,000 megawatts that participated in Bonneville's last cluster study. So that is a continuing issue. And one thing I wanted to point out, that if U.S. Commission wanted a little bit more background, WEC, the Western Electricity Coordinating Council, publishes an annual report on resource adequacy in the West. And they came out with their 2003 report earlier this year. And, you know, among the findings, which I found fascinating, in their 2022 assessment, they forecast 10-year load growth in the West at 9.6% a year. The 2023 assessment bumped that up to 16.8%. That is huge load growth in forecast projections. So it's driven by electrification and the decarbonization. So
Isn't a lot of it data centers and AI?
a lot of it's
too?
data
Yeah,
centers. Yep,
yeah,
you're exactly right.
Yeah.
These big loads are trying to come on the system, electrolyzers, data centers, you know,
They need to build their own supply now.
yeah.
which is, you know, I think the future is going to be, you'll have that, you'll have more big loads are going to site next to generation. They're not going to try to use long range transmission
Like they used to.
because of the constraints. I also think that demand side is going to suddenly surge because you need that, and transmission is going to be such a bottleneck that for smaller loads, you know, reducing load and shaping that load at the demand side is, I think we undervalue it, quite frankly. And as power prices start spiking, you're going to see demand side resources be a good business to be in,
Mhm.
I think. So, lastly, I believe you all received that letter to Representative Ronald to Chris put together on the CCA. So that's in play. Basically supporting CCA from the utilities position, and particularly with the inclusion of geothermal resources. And
We have that under our legislative update.
that was changed.
Okay.
Oh, on the legislative update.
Yeah, are we gonna, this Climate Commitment Act discussion?
Yeah, I was hoping we could discuss it more. So
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll hold my comments.
Yeah.
Lastly, we're having more problems at water plant one, but I'll leave that to Kurt in his operations report to discuss what we're doing about the latest issue. I believe you were informed by Chris of
In the
having
interim.
difficulties with the old plants. That's all I've got.
Thank you. We're going to move to old business and start with a broadband update.
Not a lot to update. We have the bar committee meeting next week.
Broadband.
Broadband, I was thinking adjudication. My
We'll get
apologies.
there. So excited.
Yeah.
You heard the starting now.
Yeah, I heard,
All right,
saw the gun go up and I took off.
Andrew.
Sure, Brian, do you want me to kick things off for us? Good
Do a
morning.
better job than I would.
Good morning, commissioners. So I'll start with Point Roberts, the Point Roberts project. As you know, a few weeks ago, we had our kickoff meeting with our design engineering firm. Not much to report today on that, other than lots of things are going on, right? We had our kickoff and we had initial design going on. Next, we'll move into poll review of the polls and analysis, and that will take us through the end of March. So I won't bore you with all the mundane details, but things are moving. And but like I said, nothing major to report. The next big step will be, of course, what we're looking at for polls and make ready, things like that. So that's coming. But out in the field, I did want to let you know that we did find that there's been new fiber that's built inside the PUD's proposed project area. So there's been new private investment in infrastructure. And so what we've done is we've looked at where that fiber is going and the address points that they're hitting. And what we'd like to do, or what we're recommending, is to remove those address points because they're already served and reallocate that funding that would have otherwise gone to those points to another area of Point Roberts. Was outside of our original project area, but are still unserved. It wasn't included. And we floated that idea with the provider out there, Would Be Tell, and they said, of course, we have no problem with you serving that unserved area. We have no plans to serve that area anyway. That's good. We then went to the state broadband office, the funding agency, and pitched this idea to them, and they said, of course, no problem. And there doesn't appear to be any material financial change to the original scope with the engineering firm. So I'll be out in the field to look at the verification of that new route and how that might impact construction when we go out to bid for construction. But otherwise, it's a very even transition from the served area to another unserved area of the point. So I want to give you an update on that. If there's any questions, otherwise I'll move on to some other broadband.
I have a question because it actually just goes, a person made a public comment the last time we met that I thought was interesting, and I think it bears more discussion on Starlink. You know, we have these underserved and unserved areas that actually could be served, but probably at a much higher cost, right? Will that ever be taken into account when it comes to funding or when it comes to us prioritizing projects? What are we doing with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think absolutely it will come into consideration, especially, we're approaching BEAD. We're going to be uncovering statewide, very high cost areas where fiber to the premise is not going to be feasible, probably going to be exceeding $10,000 per home pass. I mean, in recent rounds, I've seen $20,000 to $30,000 per home pass. We'll be looking at hybrid solutions, fiber to wireless, but even then with the terrain, rugged terrain here in Washington and especially in Whatcom County, we might be looking at some of those other alternatives, which, just because the funding agencies have a checklist of how they prioritize their funding, and historically it's been fiber to the premise. I think that's a real consideration it's going to help folks get served, maybe not served to the state standard, but they'll get better internet than they had, previously. So, but as we approach the new funding, there are they prioritize fiber. They do allow for hybrid solutions, but yeah, satellite, I think they're probably going to get a lot more attention in the next coming years for sure. Yeah. Okay, so
Could I just ask one more question too with
Sure.
the Point Roberts? I am just curious with this project and then in your kind of the lay of the land statewide, if you feel like there's kind of what the key things that could get us either off schedule or off budget would be, and what we're sort of doing to manage those risks.
for the Point Roberts project specifically.
Yeah,
Well, I think there's some big milestones that will be pressed, with, which one will be the make ready for the poles out in the field. They're aging out there. And we did account for some, for those poles that might need to be replaced in our initial application.
Okay.
And we put contingencies on the overall project to account for cost overruns and things like that. So that's some of the kind of pre-efforts we made. But so we'll have that, we'll have the bill of materials that will be produced. We'll go out to bid for those. So that's another, making sure we accounted for financially, all the materials that we'll need to purchase. And then, of course, the big one will be when we go out to bid for the construction, making sure we have the dollars available and we project manage that well, which we will, to avoid any cost overruns. But it is a large project for this utility, but overall, it's I'm confident that it's going to go smoothly. But I hope that answers your question. We put in some contingencies up front, and those are kind of the next milestones we'll hit that we'll know if things do go sideways. I know that the state broadband office has a pool of dollars that was left over from the last round for specifically for cost overruns, but I'm pretending like I never heard that.
Right, good. And with the poles, so I know those are PSE poles.
Correct.
And then, but because the last person to attach is the one that has to pay for the pole upgrade, is that still the policy around the pole replacement? Okay,
Yes.
so we budgeted for that pole replacement in our initial application, or?
For make ready, yeah, for
Okay.
make ready costs, which is, anything from pole needs to be replaced to, the first attacher needs to be moved up a foot, kind of a thing on the pole.
Okay.
There are many different things that you look at a pole and try to decide, well, does it make more sense to go underground here, or can we attach to that pole? If we do
Okay.
attach to that pole, is it going to be, crazy cost? Do we need to set a new pole? All these things.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Just curious to kind of get in your head a little bit around all the project management challenges you're juggling. Thank you.
Sure, and we do have a Gantt chart for the design, and we'll have a Gantt chart timeline for the construction as well. So in future meetings, we'll probably show that Gantt chart as well, so you can see where we are in the timeline.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure. We we mentioned a federal funding opportunity called Reconnect under USDA. I think maybe 2 or 3 commission meetings ago. The notice of funding opportunity was dropped, and staff reviewed it. Chris and I reviewed it, and it doesn't look favorable to us as a utility to apply. So instead, what we'd like to do is direct our focus to the upcoming BEAD rounds. So I can go into a lot more details on what we found and what we impact, but that's the gist of the Reconnect 5. So maybe we'll see what happens if there's a Reconnect 6, if it makes sense for us to apply. County franchise agreement, thanks to John and his team for getting us going on that. There's the county there'll be a public hearing on March 19th, and I'll be there for that evening county council meeting in case there's any questions. So I want to let you know that that's moving, and big thanks to John. Thanks.
I think they may not take action that night.
Okay.
Maybe at the next meeting.
Okay, right.
Give first, second.
Thank you. And then last is the work session date. At the last meeting, you had requested a work session date for broadband. So I was looking to your guidance for when you'd like to get that set up.
Any preferences?
Yeah, so there's one thing that is important is that we decide the topics that we want to discuss at the work session. And one of the topics that I want to address is that, there's this preliminary zones that the state broadband office, what's the correct term for that, Andrew? The map that they.
Yeah, polygon areas, project area, they're draft
Preliminary
project areas.
Yep. Map was produced. I don't think there's a new draft for that yet.
No, possibly April, first week, second week of
So
April.
for me, the question back to you is, I want the PUD and in collaboration with the port to come up with a plan for all those project areas. And that project areas may be, the response might be, we know this ISP is going to pursue this project. It may be, that, the PUD is gonna pursue, but I want to identify all the project areas that we, are going to, that are gonna get served. And so that we know what we're actually going to not address. So we know when round 2 comes up of beach funding, what we're gonna have to be prepared to against. So I guess, that's a lot of work for you and Gina and others to figure all that out. It would be a mistake to do this thing so late that it would interfere with our window for putting in applications. So I think it should happen sometime between now and far enough in advance of when you're working on your submissions. Because what you need from the commission is, okay, yeah, this looks like a good plan. And so that you have the plan well in place before you're preparing your proposal. Proposal or proposals, right? Because we have the consortium and we have all these other vehicles through which we may not be the primary actor, but maybe supporting. So for me, that's turning the question back to you. And obviously, one of the things that automatically comes into consideration with that is the thinking about wireless. If we can't serve it through hard fiber, what about providing mid-mile to support fiber? No, to support wireless infrastructure. So So do you know what that date is from that information, or do you think you need to get back to us?
Yeah, there's lots of moving pieces, right? Well, for the project areas, I think they said April 8th, we'll have the release of the updated draft project areas. And then the final project areas after the challenge process will be in July, very end of July.
Well, we don't want to wait
meeting.
that late.
I agree with you. And the port and the PUD are meeting this week to look at how we want to divide, if we want to do a divide and conquer approach, if the port wants to do all of the project areas and the PUD supports them, vice versa, what makes sense? And then, of course, trying to figure out where these hybrid solutions make the most sense in the project areas.
So maybe I'd like to throw out late April, early May. As a potential window.
That works for me, late April, early May. I mean, if you want to look through and give us a few dates and we can just, just decide from there, that would be great, what fits your schedule. The work session, we decided to do that because you had a presentation for us and there were a lot of questions. So I think that's a great topic to discuss. And I don't know if you have things already in mind or if you want input of things that we are dying to know and have questions on ahead of time so we can really focus that session and get our answers.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to understand and have an opportunity to weigh in a little bit more on kind of the approach that the broadband steering committee comes up with for these next phase of projects, just so we have that, because that is, I think, where a lot of those questions were bubbling up when we didn't have time at the last meeting.
Okay.
And I mean, maybe even just to dig back into that PowerPoint you did last time with updated information from these more recent or PUD steering committee meetings.
Okay.
But I'd say mornings are typically better for me. Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays are the best. But would it work if he just throws out some dates via email and then
Sure.
we confirm? Okay.
Yep, I'll do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. That's all I have. Back to you, Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
Vacation.
Oh, yep, adjudication
Moment.
update.
Now I'm ready.
Now's your time.
So the two bills that we've been monitoring are on the governor's desk for signature. One to add the 5th judge and one involving the rules regarding water rights commissioner, primarily that cleans up some questions about the authority of a referee and what the parties could see. Eliminating the right to jury trials or recovery of fees. Also puts a requirement that a attorney appointed as a water rights commissioner has to go through certain training related to water, tribal issues, water law, cultural assessment, that type of thing. So those were requested, I think, by the call those. They're looking at a potential adjudication starting shortly on Lake Wilson. So. Or-
Yeah, I remember it was very Lake Rosen.
The bar committee is meeting next week. It's very interesting that they're working on establishing the e-service, e-filing, which is a big thing for lawyers. You do it in federal courts. Not many, Whatcom County has not adopted electronic filing and service, and so they're way behind a lot of other courts. And so they're using this opportunity to get the funding and establish it, but no one's clear on the order of magnitude of capabilities of the software they're looking at. The experiences, for instance, out of Aquabella case in Yakima was that there'd be a monthly docket sheet, which attorneys could review or parties could review, say what was filed, what might we be interested in on pending issues, and what would we participate in. So the issue is, how do we find out about what's going on? One case that could have a impactful legal decision precedent in our case. And so how do we monitor that? If is the software going to have the capacity to disclose on a monthly docket sheet, or how do we do that? How do you file a motion on your case, but everyone in the adjudication may have an interest. So 10,000 parties may have an interest. How do they find out? How do they participate? Do I have to serve every 10,000 parties in the case with notice of the motion? I mean, putting a stamp on it, sending it out, and doing all that? Or can I post it electronically and leave it to the parties to find out? So we have to understand the electronic system, the software system, and then design rules that govern procedures for it. And so that bar committee is focused on that, which is wholly unrelated to the sense of how we're going to do the day-to-day litigation of a case, which we're also looking at. And so my conversation with the tribes have been, let's step up a discussion that we had engaged in part because of this bar committee. So we're re-engaging on that discussion, and I have that follow-up conversation with private attorneys next week to start looking at how we might develop a post-filing rules for litigation and to have a process that's equitable and fair to all parties, big or small. So that's going. That's about the sum of it. There was a groundwater modeling study that came out from the county a week ago. I have not had a chance to dive into it. We're starting to review that internally. So word is, some scuttlebutt is that the college may not actually file in April, but sometime in the spring. They're just, reading tea leaves and smoke. They have been saying April and now they're saying spring. So what does that mean?
I'd like to ask about the Water Resources Advisory Committee yesterday. I believe Steve was on it,
Yeah, we asked him that. I couldn't go. Chris wasn't there, but we asked him to attend.
and I think our outside counsel was
Possibly.
on it. And I attended. And I had an email interchange with Steve about it. There's maybe one thing that's worth bringing up here, in particular. And that's Department of Ecology stated their number that they're currently using is 30,000 for Whatcom County parties.
Yeah, not surprised.
So that's a number for you to think about.
Yeah, no, we've heard people say 10. We thought it'd be more like 2025, and it doesn't.
Yeah, I
surprise
remember
me.
the last number I heard it here that we discussed here was 20.
Yeah.
Now we're talking 30.
And
So-
that's trying to calculate, understand all of the exempt wells and all of the unpermitted users or the surface water appropriations for irrigation. Sorry.
So the number of contacts that Ecology currently has is 87. That's a lot less than 30.
Well, and so. If the 30,000 is the number of claims. Maybe different than the number of parties. So PUD may have 4 or 6 claims based upon each water right.
Yeah.
It has, so.
But still,
An irrigator may have
You
5
don't
wells. So,
yeah. yeah, I mean, so I'm just seeing the potential for, not to be pessimistic. For many people who will get a notice and be like, what's this all about? And then many people who get who don't even have a well, who get a notice. And, there's gonna be a lot of sorting out.
Yeah, and we can't manage all those little variations.
Right, it's not our job, but it is our community. It's not the PUD's legal responsibility or fiduciary responsibility to worry about the entire county, but as electeds, we do need to be aware that our community is going to be impacted. So there's these things, and when I became a commissioner, we talked about these things. There's these things that are the obligation of commissioner to, as representatives of the PUD, to protect the PUD. And then there's
I wasn't speaking directly to the
Yeah.
legal or financial obligation. It is, there's just some things you cannot manage to prevent. You know, that a party gets served who doesn't have a well. You know, there's nothing we could do unless we took over Ecology's tasks and invested billions of dollars.
No, and I'm not saying.
So it's just the order of magnitude of this case. There are going to be these variants of things happen in our community, just people aren't gonna know, they didn't pay attention.
Yeah, also Atul, I agree with you and, I know you've had some conversations with the executive and members of the county council, and they got that budget allocation in the last legislative session. What are we hearing from the county? The education there,
Right, so,
they have funding to do,
right,
you know.
and we help them get that funding.
Exactly.
So. You wanna go first? Over here for the guy? So, okay, I'll speak to what I heard from my conversations was first of all, oh, really? Well, so
Oh, they didn't know they had.
county council
funding?
is not
Okay.
really barely aware, I mean, just like, okay, everything we do. In broadband, energy and water, naturally, we spend more time on those.
Of
things.
course.
And it consumes less, we're not dealing with all the other issues that county
Yes.
council members are dealing with, so. They may have been exposed to, that doesn't mean they remember everything that they were exposed to, so, the reality is that, there needs to be some capacity created at the county, which is already starved for natural resource people.
Mhm.
And so that's been the nature of my conversations that, again, encouraging, I think this has been at least a 5-year effort on my part, to try to communicate to the county that they need to staff up natural resources. But there's no better time than, as always, to do the right thing. There's always no better time than now, and they need that capacity at the county, in my opinion. And I'd like us all to be on the same page in terms of encouraging the county in that direction to support all of these private well users, because in general, they're not going to know how to state their rights, protect their rights. And really what they need to do is come together as a community. There needs to be an association of private wells, and it's not the planning unit. It needs to be a real association with real organizational power to represent and help the private wells figure out what they're doing and how they show up at this important event, the adjudication.
So would you agree that if Commissioner Arnett and I are in conversation with any members of the county council or the executive, reminding them about this budget that they have and the need for
Yes.
education is important, and that it's impossible for us to do because we are members, we are going to be parties of the case.
Yes, and what at the last conversation I was with Kaylee Galloway.
Yeah.
In a conversation, the way it was described as creating some kind of a staff position.
Yes.
At the county, and I 100% support that. I also recognize the fact that I've been campaigning for more resource staff to support this kind of thing at the county for many years. And I'm also willing to accept that maybe they can contract that out. But whatever,
They don't
there
need
needs
it.
to be somebody that a private well user can contact who's going to provide support services, and maybe with a website, it's going to say, hey, here's your forms, here's your quick claim forms, here's, Because ecology is presenting like they're taking care of everything to our legislators and they're trying. I'm not saying they're not trying to show up. But the reality is that, we need to take care of our own.
Well, and we have that funding for it,
Yeah,
so we
and-
should start,
and
and it
we
takes
campaign for that.
6 months for anything to get done when it involves hiring, so.
But the trigger on that
Yeah.
funding is the filing. That's important to recognize.
That's right.
I mean,
But they could still start working on a job
County
description
does
or a
Had a
RFP or
consultant on
something.
board
Mhm.
months ago to start doing. Stuff.
Yeah,
The county has been woefully neglected.
So this is-
Right.
can we get Tyler to do this before he leaves?
Tyler, I was in a meeting with Tyler and the executive on search and rescue issues a week ago, and Tyler stopped me and said, we want to get together with you and talk about water adjudication. Executive and I said, fine, reach out to me. Yes, I haven't heard. Okay.
So on this subject of while we're still on adjudication, I just want to mention that I did finally get a meeting scheduled with the Mayor Bellingham for April 30 on adjudication. So I'll be wanting to circle back with the commission, of course, John and Chris, prior to that meeting to make sure I'm representing the PUD position effectively on what we want to communicate to the city. And I know you've already had many conversations about the subject, but just reinforcing that, and when it comes from the whole commission, it might be even more effective.
Okay.
And lastly, there's a new gentleman on the scene from Yakima. Yeah. Do you know his name?
I saw your email. And
What a resume though, huh?
He had quite the resume.
I mean, gosh, he's at the end of his career, he's retiring, he's spends part-time in Bellingham and knows a lot about water.
The professor at the University of Nevada.
So we're meeting with them next Thursday.
We're at 9 to 10, What's the scope of that? Is that just the informal discussion or?
I am not gonna try to set agenda for meeting between two water rights attorneys.
I know, is he looking to do an article? Is he looking to participate in the case somehow?
Yeah, he has a desire to help improve the situation. And he has specific ideas about how the water rights stacking could work to the benefit of everyone.
I have a question about process. So when adjudication is filed and they were looking at April, but you said maybe it's gonna be. So will everybody be noticed at the same time? Will there be like a huge drop of, because even if you have somebody that's educating, they're just gonna be in it, if it's not rolled out sort of in phases, like everybody's gonna be calling that number, right, at the same time.
So I expect that, yes, there'll be some big drop. Exactly when that occurs, I can't tell you, but apology is going to have to serve all the parties with the summons. And I anticipate the court will over the issue of summons. The unique thing, I think I mentioned in the past, about the adjudication statute is that unlike a regular litigation, as an attorney, I'm authorized to sign a summons and serve it. The adjudication statute says the court issues the summons. Or the issues of the summons. So presumably a college is going to go in, file it, ask the court to order the issuance of a summons. The court will order that, then they will mail to all the addresses they have on record. They will likely do some newspaper publication to cover things, and then folks will have a certain amount of time to respond. They have to file a claim within 1 year of that notice of the summons. So yeah, there's going to be a big drop. U.S. Postal Service will be busy with these large packets. Yeah, it's ecology hasn't always been its own best friend in the process, whether it's communication policy or otherwise. But by the same token, this is a difficult task, and it is not just eating an elephant; it's eating an elephant herd. Bad examples, but I mean, there's so many separate issues that all have to come together and focus it and get it. It's difficult, and it's easy to be on the outside critic.
Sure.
Than be on the inside trying to organize this with policy. I'm not trying to defend them, but I'm just understanding what they've got to do, given they've been given this time.
they have a hard mission.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the legislative update.
I gave you the update on the two bills on adjudication, and then I don't have anything. I wasn't doing the climate cat. Acquisition. I'm sure you want this.
All I had was the letter,
The
so.
only thing I was gonna say with the letter was that, I was just gonna forward it to the Cascadia Daily News, so they know our position on it, because I anticipate that there will be more coverage of those initiatives. I don't anticipate that there's gonna be a story specifically about the PUD, but like, they might pull a quote from it in the future. So I just think that it's great that Representative Ramel got this, but the whole point of the letter is to sort of let it be known that we support this and why we support it. You guys.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, and I had talked to Chris on Wednesday about we could possibly turn this letter into a resolution in support of the climate, not in support of not repealing the Climate Commitment Act.
Yeah,
I know when I was a council member with the city of Blaine, we did that for the $30,
Car
car
tax
tax,
thing, yeah.
because we had some projects that required transportation funding. So I don't know, I think that maybe
I
that
like
might
that.
be a good idea.
That's actually a really good idea. I like that too, because it's a thing that other PUDs could sort of copy and paste if they're interested in supporting the same, clean energy funding. So I like that idea, and then we could share that news with the Cascadia Daily.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's already sent it to.
Oh, thank you. Okay, great.
Well, let's
do you mind,
formalize that then.
can you pass that on?
That's all
Okay.
right, Chris. It's a support for the CCA, but not necessarily addressing the initiative, but.
Mhm.
I would not be surprised if there's lots of other local governments that have already passed similar things or are in the process of
probably
it.
working
So,
on it.
yeah, I'm
Mhm.
sure that you could find something. Should I move into it's geothermal legislative?
yes.
Okay,
I just
so,
want, when you do that, also mention the things that passed that,
yeah,
right?
with geothermal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so 6039 passed the geothermal bill that will create a grant program to support geothermal development. But it is subject to the initiative vote on the Climate Commitment Act. So it passed, but it won't have any funding unless that, and then the $5,000 budget proviso for the Whatcom County geothermal pre-feasibility study was included in the capital budget. It is not contingent on voter rejection of the CCA repeal.
500,000, right?
Sorry, yeah, did I say more than that?
He said 5,000.
Oh, 500,000, yeah, we wouldn't be able to do anything with 5,000.
No.
500,000. And just a reminder that that money is being administered by the Nooksack tribe, with us in a consultation role. So, the dust is just kind of settling, and, unfortunately, the governor got pneumonia and had to cancel his trip up here. So I think we'll be connecting with the tribe, and their leadership soon to talk about next steps and possibly some sort of a press release around that funding and the pre-feasibility study work that's going to be happening between now and 2025. All that work, the pre-feasibility work all needs to be done by June of 2025, I believe. So that's great.
Yeah.
That was really successful for a tight budget year to get that in there. So that's all I have on the legislative update.
Wonderful. Okay, well, if we have nothing else, then we will move on to new business. I think it's probably Kurt
Yes,
talking about the award of bid.
that would be Kurt.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm
Morning.
here to request awarding of a bid for our BPA and telco line for extending the fiber. And this is another step forward to doing basically a fiber ring through all of our facilities and having a hardwired connection for all of our SCADA comms, all of our business network and everything like that. We received 3 responsive bids and Waco Construction was the low bidder. And I'm here to request your approval of that.
Any questions?
No questions. I believe, Con.
I might add, this fiber extension actually will terminate right next to the Bonneville and Talco substation. So it facilitates not only a ring for our SCADA system, but should we have a presence at Talco, I support the AltaGas project, we'll have a visible metering point there as well. So it facilitates other things for us.
I'll make a motion to award the bid for the BPA and Talco fiber extension project to Waco Construction.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, commissioners.
And Kurt, will you be talking about the memorandum of understanding with NOAANet?
That was the end.
Nope. I will
Andrew.
not.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks, Kurt.
Thank you.
Hello again. So we're looking to have your approval of the draft broadband equity access and deployment, a public consortium teaming memorandum with NOAANet. So essentially, what NOAANet's looking to do is gather PUDs like ours and others around the state to come together in a consortium style group where we can share resources on a variety of different items in preparation for the upcoming BEAD round. Things like financial capability, managerial, technical, compliance, operational. And so they'll break out these groups into separate teams to tackle each of these different details that are in the BEAD NOPO. And it's just collaborative in nature. At this time, there's no financial burden. If that comes up in the future, we'll come back to you. But there was an action memo included and the memorandum of understanding in your packet. So I'm, here to answer any questions.
I just want to say that I attended with Andrew the bead workshop. What was that, last week?
Yes.
I think it was early last week. Anyway, so it was for me, I had a follow-up conversation with Andrew about it, and just to make sure that there's nothing in this MOU that in any way restricts us and however we proceed. It's just basically, hey, let's all get along kind of and support each other and form subgroups as is appropriate to help educate each of us, both at the consortium level and at the individual level. So I didn't see anything in it. I don't know if you saw anything in it that was that in any way binds us or restricts us. It's all opportunity. It's all upside as far and just a communication document. I just wanted to say that in support of the resolution.
Yeah. Great. Christine, do you have any questions?
What other PUDs are joining in this work with NOAANet at this time?
That's a good question. I don't know at this time. The idea is this Friday, NOAANet will send out the final MOU, which will have everyone, all the PUDs that want to join on there, so we can go and circulate for signature this Friday. That's why this is the draft today. But right now, I won't know until I get that final in on Friday.
Do you have any ideas though? Like, is this something that PUD is likely to be a part of, or?
I don't have any insight on what other PUDs, maybe other commissioners,
Okay.
Shani, but
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things I discussed, not after this BEAD workshop, I just want to be clear, but at the last in Olympia telecom meeting, I asked Angela about where NOAANet was going and whether she felt like this collaborating consortium was in any way a downside for us, and she said she didn't think so.
Okay.
So
Okay, thanks. I'll make a motion if we're ready to.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the draft BEAD Public Consortium Teaming MOU.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
and moving on to the operations report,
That'd be Kurt.
and that will be Kurt.
Yes, the future me.
Is Brian gonna make you grow a mustache?
Yes.
Oh, I could, but you don't want to see
It comes with the job.
I'm gonna, part of my operations is report, I want to follow up on the email you received from Chris March 6th about the problems that we're having over at Plant 1. So right now we are running with one high head pump. And this is like all of our other pumps, multiple decades old. And so we are obviously rather nervous about not really having a backup currently. We are looking to hook up a new variable frequency drive to pump 5 in the middle of April. So we pulled it to do a kind of a quick once over to make sure that everything would be ready to go for the VFD. We found a lot of pitting in the pump, a lot of wear and tear. Luckily, we found that we can do kind of a polymer coat on the bells, the blades of the bells, to kind of extend the service life on that pump. And it turns out that it's not really a long timeline and not a long turnaround time for this. So it's not incredibly expensive. So we're kind of moving forward already with that to get that polymer on there and get it back into the plant in basically within the timeline of the new VFD, which is, like I said, in the middle of April. So even still, that only puts us at 2 pumps out of 5 that we have over there. So we're still right now, like I said, we're at 1, but we're still kind of just trying to do what we can to get us back up into more of a better operational state. And so another thing that we found when we pulled the pump is that we have wooden baffles between our basins, and apparently they are starting to fall apart a little bit. I guess we're losing some pieces, but next week on the 19th, we're planning on having a plant shutdown to do some of substation work. So we're going to take that and some also work inside the plant, but we're going to take that as an opportunity to inspect the basins, inspect the clear well, see if we can find out where some of this debris may be coming from, and obviously tear it out if possible to not suck anything more into our pumps. So that's going to happen next Tuesday. And I actually just got a message from Garrett that we were having a little bit of good progress over there at the substation. So this timeline for next Tuesday that we were getting nervous about is still going to happen next week. So that's kind of where we're at. We're still working on getting pump 3, which would be a whole new pump, set up over there. And that would be a much longer timeline. I think that was probably somewhere between 40 plus weeks, I believe it was. But also because the plant is in its state, we can't just buy a new pump and drop it in place. There's some pedestal floor work for the mounting base of the pump that will need to happen. So it's not just a plug and play situation. Everything that we have to do over there takes a lot of ingenuity and kind of stepping back and thinking about how we're going to do any not new installs, any replacement installs. One of the things that Chris mentioned is working with our customers, especially the large industrial customers, about maybe potentially reducing loads. At this time of the year, we're not really too concerned about it, but as we move into the summertime and the increased warm weather, when we pick up potential irrigation contracts or customers, our loads are going to increase. So we're kind of making some plans to try and be prepared for that. Like I said, pump 5 should be up and running. So we have 1 and 5 and working on pump 3. I have contacted several of our larger industrial customers to try and set up meetings with them about where we are and what our plans are going forward with potential plant 1 rebuild and just where we are right now. getting some response from some of them, but not all of them. So I'm gonna have to ping them again and get them up to speed. We are expecting a 30% plans from Consor, our plant here at the end of this month, March 29th. We expect 30% plans, which will give us kind of an idea of what kind of an updated cost we might be looking at if we were to proceed with a plant one rebuild. And I know that's quite a bit of information, but it's all plant one information. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Well, yeah, sure, I'll ask my question. Are we having like water pressure issues with only one pump working or, I mean, are the extra pumps just for backup?
No, we're able to pick it up with plant two. So at this
Okay.
point right now, we are not, but if we were in late August and the industries were doing a lot of cooling water and that, and everybody was watering their corn and potatoes, we could start running into some pressure issues. If we were still only with one pump at plant one. But as right now, we're doing just fine. Plant two is covering us as well.
You know, given the water demands, the aggregate water demands out there, we can carry with plant two our base load, if you will, water demands. It's when we get into those either peaking demand periods, like Kurt said, or if we have river conditions in which we have to reduce the capacity of the plant, like high turbidity is a problem. We can't pump as much water, as much clarified water, right? Or Fresnel ice in the winter. But yeah, the next point at which we're probably going to be stressed will be this summer. And we want to have in place by then a contingency plan, working with the industries to address that. We may have to have them forego any testing of their fire system or hydroing of tanks, or, you know, they have to live with a lower pressure. We can still provide the flow, the amount of water they need, but the pressure drops. All those things are.
And then the other issue we kind of
Part
run
of
into
our
is that
toolbox.
here at plant two is that we are not really able to do any service on plant two. Anything that we would like to do as far as maintenance and stuff that kind of has to be held off or
No slide.
kind of rescheduled for just to make sure, because plant one can't cover the other way if plant two was to slow down.
So what I wanted to refer to it, so Christine, you brought this, book in to the commission, right? And I've been reading it. And I'm just wondering how much what this book talks about is relevant to our plant one situation. When I've been reading it, I keep thinking about plant one. Now, Kurt, I can't quite see your face. I don't know if you've seen the book yet.
I can see a book on the table, but I don't.
I'll drop it off in your office.
That's what I was wondering if that, because, we're at a really critical point, crossroads is the right word, maybe, with plant one. And, this might be a good outside the box tool, not necessarily providing the recipe itself, but it may ask some of the questions that'll help you figure out how to get us out of this dilemma that we're in.
Well, and I almost wonder if we should stop talking about it as the plant one rebuild and we should start talking about the plant three build. I mean, I know that I know that that's kind of what we're thinking anyways, because we have to keep plant one going while we build the new one. But I'll drop the book off on your desk, Kurt, since you have nothing else going on.
I'll start reading.
And we'll say that there's a lot of conversations that staff is having internally and with our consultants that haven't been brought to the table here in the commission meeting. It is out of the box, thinking in terms of, we always thought we'd totally rebuild a new plant. Well, maybe we're in a situation where we just build the piece that removes the critical failure points, and then we plan for a future build. All these things are in play. The other thing is maybe we can put in a new high head system and bypass the plant if the industry is willing to live with less clarified water.
Mhm.
You know, bag the treatment process, ship the water to them, you know, can we do that and do that quickly? These type of things are getting discussed.
I love that. And I don't want to ruin it if you haven't gotten there, but you know, one of the things they talk about is like, instead of one big thing, which there's so many financial risks and kind of project management risks, just the importance of modularity. And, you know, if you can kind of think about it in terms of like breaking it into smaller pieces and, you know, like Legos, you know, so
Yeah,
instead of,
yeah.
of doing $100,000 new plant, can we break it into, you know, little smaller pieces somehow? I don't even know what that would look like in this case, but,
That's spot
That's
on.
why,
That's one
yeah.
of the things we are looking at.
Yeah, that's great.
We're at a critical point, so.
Kurt, I wanted to congratulate you on your recent promotion to Assistant General Manager of Operations. We're grateful to have you and apologize for the trial by fire.
Thank you, Commissioner, and it's, you know, I'm ready for the challenge, so we'll see what happens. Thank you. But that's all I have for commission, or excuse me, for the report, if there's any more questions.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kurt.
All right. Thank you.
thanks.
We're going to move on to the commissioner reports.
Well, I had an uneventful, I'll go first.
Sure.
The governor canceled and BPA canceled. So I just was, I read this book. That's what I did. Everyone canceled
That's
on me.
great. And do you have any upcoming per diem requests?
Oh, I know we have the Wapuda virtual meetings, so I haven't actually dug into the agenda yet, but I'm gonna try to catch some of those depending on my schedule.
Could we all
And-
talk about Wapuda a little bit, maybe? then?
Sure,
So
yeah,
I'm only gonna attend, for Wapuda, Thursday,
okay,
because I've got PPC on Wednesday.
okay.
So,
I think I will only be attending my committee meetings on Thursday also.
Okay,
well, who's board of directors? then?
I am.
Okay,
Mhm.
so you'll cover board first.
Yeah, I'll jump on that one for sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. Atul, do you have
Well, we.
Commissioner Dejmani? She said she's finished.
Yeah, okay. Well, we finished talking about, Wapuda, then for the following week before our next commission meeting, we have the meeting that I just mentioned with John, that was for, Thursday, the 21st, right?
Yep.
At
9 to 10, we're gonna do that at Adachi.
Okay. And, let's see, what's that? Let me just see. That is all I have for, next week, so. Already talked about the, conversation I had yesterday, and attending the water resources. Now, that would be an example that if the commission's okay with it, I'd like to per diem yesterday, even though I didn't announce it in my last per diem report. It was something that just happened. This guy was, wanting to talk, and so we set up a time yesterday. And it turned out to be really fruitful, and I also, ended up spending a lot more time at the Water Resources Advisory Committee yesterday than I thought I would, because sometimes they're really drab, but, it was, very good update. Specifically, they talked about the snow situation, and, they called it, there's a term that now is being coined by ecology, it's called snow drought. Basically, yeah, we're getting sufficient water for perhaps for, even for dams, for their early use in the early summer, but, we hit 72%, of average snowpack. But the worry is that these next 2 weeks we'll lose that. So, it'll come back down quite a bit, and we may be in the 60s or something like that. I don't know that. I'm just gonna guess based on, maybe it'll be in the 60s or the 50s, which is of course still really concerning for summer drought. Bottom line, and the South Fork in particular.
I would be okay with you.
Okay,
Christie.
yeah, I'm fine with that,
Okay.
yeah.
okay.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Um. Yeah, I'll also be trying to attend the WAPUDA committee meetings on Thursday. I have been in contact with Karina. I think everybody has already spoken to Karina. We've locked down April 16th, the afternoon of
Right.
April 16th.
Let me shut up.
And Anne has contacted the Shuxton Golf Course, and we're looking at maybe Lakeway as a potential venue. So we haven't ironed out the venue yet, but that is it for me also.
So that's not a regular, a commission meeting day, right? The 16th, it'll be the other Tuesday. Right. And we start at noon or 1? What do you mean?
I think it was 1:30.
Okay.
But I have, hasn't been set either.
No, I just want to block it out.
Yeah, a little bit squishy, so.
Alright, Thank
Um,
you.
Okay, let's move to public comment. There's no one in the room. Do any of our attendees wish to make a comment? Seeing no hands, I am going to move to executive session to review the qualifications and or performance of a public employee. We estimate this will be 30 minutes, so coming back at about 10 o'clock.
No actions anticipated.
Oh, no action anticipated.
Can we take a 2-minute break?
Yes. We are still muted. Okay, it's now 10:02. We are out of executive session. No action was taken and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like, drop this off.
Give it to Kurt to read. Yeah, just a little more to his plate.
So on this guy's,